All right, welcome to the AI Conformance Working Group, everybody. Today is October 9th, 2025. Before we begin, a quick reminder that this is governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct. Please be kind and constructive. And if you have any concerns, feel free to reach out to one of us after the meeting. All the developments and discussions are kept in this working group AI Conformance meeting notes, as well as the Kubernetes Slack channel. And if you haven't already, please join the mailing list as well. With that, also this meeting is recorded, public shared. Please use the Zoom chat to raise your hand to ask questions. All right, with that, let's get started. First thing is, we would like to update the cadence of this meeting to bi-weekly starting this week. So the next one will be 2 weeks from now. How do people, are we good with this? Bad? Proceed? Okay, awesome. I don't hear any disagreements, so we'll make the changes after this. Next, hi, I see one hand. Go for it.
Yeah, so I think just one comment on that one. Do we have folks identified that are going to review the submissions given that we had a rough deadline, right? October end. And meanwhile, if people are looking for like synchronous feedback, what's the forum for them?
Janet, go for it.
Oh, actually, I think there was an echo on my end. So I think the CNCF is going to review the self-certification, but I was planning to talk about something else. I want to update that the reason that we are reducing the cadence is that originally we decided to meet weekly because we want to catch the KubeCon timeline. But given that we're already finished with defining the first version, I think we're good to reduce the cadence. And then we also are going to have a process for us to discuss and discuss and define the requirements async. So I think that would also help.
Yes. And just and any other comments about the cadence? And also reviewing the submissions, I don't think Marty's on the call, but he did mention that it will be the same folks who's reviewing the Kubernetes conformance PRs. So it will be the same people, same process. All right.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Moving on. And just a quick update. I know last week we had discussions around AI conformance requirements for 133. And this was submitted and already merged. So if you have to use 133 to be conformant, please look at that doc, basically. And you're covered. All right, any comments on this one before we move to the next one? Okay. Yes, and this is basically again update. Like if you're ready to submit PR, please start already. CNCF reviewers will start reviewing them. All right. Open topic. So last week we talked about there's a proposal for the process for how to submit new requirements and or how to graduate an existing requirement. So we went ahead and updated this doc based on comments and feedbacks from folks on the during the call and after the call. So the TL, please take a look at asynchly as well. But the TLDR here is we would like to propose that we want to follow the timeline for KEP process. So basically, using the same timeline to ensure that new requirements that need to be locked in for a given Kubernetes release will be done so prior to the kept freeze timeline. And so as an example, for 135, sorry, as an example, this, oops, this is kind of what 135 has, right? So imagine we're doing it for 135. To lock in the requirements for 135, we will follow the same enhancement freeze timeline. And then once the requirements are locked in, then we would follow the code freeze timeline. Where is the code freeze? Sorry, scroll up too much. Okay, we will basically use a code freeze timeline to lock in all the verbiage and testing that we want to do for that particular requirement. All right. Do we have any questions on this before we talk about 135? What we want to do for 135? Since the idea is that since we're just proposing this now, we will start to follow the same timeline starting 136.
Can we have like more details exactly? So I think what do we do at kept freeze time, right? Because what happens is a lot of keps will be proposed, but not all of them will actually make it over the line. So what are we doing at that point? I think code freeze may be a better point in time to know what's actually gonna make it in. And I think if you're gonna have requirements around for must, then I think we should have something reaching GA, right? So maybe some more details there that which should be tracking only GA requirements and clarity around what we can actually do at kept freeze time versus code freeze time.
Yeah, I think the thought is that we need kept freeze time to decide to lock in what the set of requirements that we want to consider to update for a given Kubernetes release, right? So once we agreed on that list, then we can go through discussions on the actual verbiage. And that could result in this particular requirement stays as a should. That's possible, right? That same thing with kept, like a lot of kept, even though they're accepted, but in the end, they're not actually advancing for various reasons, right? This is to ensure we can focus on a set of requirements and not kind of spin our cycle on all of them.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think one more thing we should consider is like, I know this one was the first one, but I think moving on, like focus more on having a test suite so it's not all self-documented and really start having tests for all the musts and graduation criteria for shoulds to have tests and so on.
I'll let Janet jump in. I think.
Okay, yeah.
So I think before we have a full suite of tests for all the musts, we can probably relax the timeline for proposing new requirements. But once we have all the automated tests in for all the requirements and all the musting requirements and requiring all the musts to have tests, then we need to follow that timeline to allow more time to implement the test. So one thing I'm thinking about is taking a example use case, for example, let's say we want to graduate some requirement from should to must, and taking DRA as an example, that depends on the DRA to be GA, but that is not certain until the PR, the code freeze time. This is similar to, I'm just using a realistic example we have in 134. So in that case, I think we would be proposing the must requirement as aspirational, assuming that the cap in the enhancement repo is going to be
GA. actually,
GA.
yeah.
And then if that doesn't happen, then we need to revisit our requirement.
Yeah, exactly. There should be a buffer after the code freeze to know what actually made it and what's not. Yeah.
Right, so we need to ask something like, something like about, in the event, right, a Kubernetes feature does not reach GA, for example, what do we do, right? We need to a must. I'm just putting here as a placeholder. We'll change the verbiage later. But I think that's what we're capturing, right? Yeah. Kevin?
Yeah, I guess it seems a little fast to me to even like a feature gets promoted to GA. Like for DRA is an example where it was promoted to GA, but we know there's still like ecosystem lag. And are we really saying that like when a feature is GA, it's AI conformant like in that release, and then people have to certify that even before like I mean at least in my organization like something gets GA'd and then it usually takes a couple releases for people to start actually using some of these features. So I don't know if there's like a window that we should expect before something gets GA before we can really make it conformance.
So one reason that, or one goal of the AI conformance is that we want to be able to move faster, because the Kubernetes conformance is more, probably require more soak time, but we are envisioning that we can introduce standard faster in a faster way and iterate faster, so that because
Yeah,
the AI is progressing so fast that we just want to make sure that we are not slowing people down and users can get the latest feature they want.
and I think that makes sense. I guess it all depends on whether or not like we as Kubernetes are relying on vendors to provide some of this support, because or if it's like completely in tree. If it's in tree and available, maybe that's fine, but I can see a case where vendors may not be able to keep up with some of the newer GA. Like,
Yeah, to jump in here, I think making DRA available is what the first requirement was. And so if you don't alter the Kubernetes distribution, you've got it there. Then there is the layer of your accelerator provider is using DRA. And that is something that I don't think we can make a must for several releases, because most of the people who are going for conformant distributions probably have partnerships with AMD and NVIDIA and the accelerator providers. And those are the companies who will end up doing the work in their own operators. And we have to wait on them to be done. If we set it as a must that you must use it before they have produced, then a lot of the conformant distros will fall off because they are not going to go do duplicate work to the accelerator providers who are also doing it. And I think that's how most people are. And so we just have to encourage them to move along. But I don't think we can enforce it in AI conformance unless we want everyone to just fall off, or most of them to fall off.
Yeah, and I just want to like maybe also mention that the CAD process does call out demonstration of adoption as a requirement for a feature to go to GA. Obviously, I think to Kevin's point, there's like a chicken egg problem sometimes, right? Is you need to have some adoption to go to GA, and then after GA, then a lot of vendors would actually be okay with shipping it, right? Because it's waiting for maturity. So I think a lot of these requirements, the way I envision this is there is the Kubernetes entry features that happens, and then there's like the rest of the world that catches up, the things that run on top of Kubernetes, right? So I think as AI conformance, we need to kind of look at both to make sure that we're nudging people to run with specific features and adopting these changes as quickly as possible. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it makes sense. Thinking back to like kind of a separate, like with a deprecating, where we have to kind of look at making sure that all supported. I'm looking at deprecating C group v1, and that one's like where we have a long tail, and I imagine we have kind of the opposite case where our GA feature comes out and it might take time for people to use it, and so then I wonder if it's like we follow like GA of all supported Kubernetes releases, and then that's kind of like that's enough time to say like, okay, if you haven't moved over in 3 releases, like it's kind of your fault, but it seems a little bit fast to say we GA'd, now switch, now use this feature right away, but maybe we could. We have, I think, support at most 3 Kubernetes versions at a time. Maybe that's the more conservative approach we could take, but it's an option.
Pooja?
I think that's exactly what Matt kind of was pointing at. Like the things that like move to GA on the version that is GA, move to must on the version that is GA are things that are anyway in tree. It's not the usage. But like with the first item where we have DRA should be enabled. That's not something that forces anyone to do anything. It's just like forcing you to not disable anything, which is, I think, reasonable. On the other ones, we do need to look at, and at least in this process, we have not at all written that once something is GA, we have to make it a must. It's the other way around, that a must needs to have a GA before. That's the only thing that we wrote down in the process.
Okay, so is there anything you folks want to suggest? Or are we okay with this process? Just following the CAP timeline?
I think we also need to try it out to find out where the edges are, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, this is just an initial
Yes.
proposal, right? And I'm sure we will refine as we test it, as you said. So yeah, so just giving this process a bit of time, right? We're actually proposing that we're at, starting 135, we're gonna relax the time a little bit to, so like instead of the kept freeze time, the required freeze time, we'll extend it a little bit so that we can review the list of accepted requirements for 135, and the deadline is basically end of October, right? Obviously not the same as the current kept freeze timeline. And similarly, code freeze, we would extend it to beginning of December. Again, just to give folks more time to make sure the verbiage is correct and make sure that we have a good way of self-attesting, right? And again, none of this will touch actual automated code until 137, as we mentioned down here, right? So are we okay with this time proposal for 135?
So, I guess the one thing, is there a reason why this has to be tied in tree with Kubernetes? Like most of the Kubernetes community is pretty busy around kept freeze time. And like, is there any reason why like this thing, like once 1.34 is out, we have a separate process for that kind of we can see where everything is, because it just feels like we'll be like I try to follow a lot of the caps, and it's already hard enough to see like what is being removed out of a milestone, and then it feels like we're saying we'll have to do a similar thing here. And it just seems like it's kind of noisy.
Janet?
We just follow this so that there's a single timeline that people can look, single calendar people can look at and follow. It's just the default answer we have. And I think we can come up with something else, but we can start with trying this out to see if it really works. I do have a separate question about
Oh, before we get to that, I just want to loop back and answer the question about the timeline. Why? One of the reasons is actually we don't want to continue to rely on lazy consensus, right? I think that's hard to make sure everyone's feedback is incorporated, right? So I think having a clear deadline will signal folks like, hey, you have this much time to voice your concerns, or +1 on a requirement that you think should graduate for a given Kubernetes release, right? So this is why we thought that having a clear deadline is better than lazy consensus.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably agreeing more with Murnau earlier that like maybe like we can always say like 1.35 is out. Like our deadline would be like post the kept freeze and code freeze, maybe like docs freeze to release, and like we kind of find that calendar. I just am more worried about people's, like what I've seen is even when people propose like a kep in tree or out of tree kep into the Kubernetes ecosystem, it's very difficult to get eyes on it during the kep freeze because people are prioritizing Kubernetes related, like in tree Kubernetes related work. And it just seems like I worry that it might be hard to actually find people's time on this in a busy season. So maybe post code freeze would be a good time to put a deadline on these. That kind of allows us to reevaluate once the dust settles.
Janet?
I think one of the original requirements was also that this conformance, similar to Kubernetes conformance, gets released with the Kubernetes release. So it's always bound to a release, which is why we can't just say, okay, once 35 is out, we start with 35. And as far as I understand, the kept code freeze deadline is like the end of it. It's not like you have to wait until the deadline to give your feedback, but it should happen before. It gives you even more motivation to do it way before, because otherwise we would have to actually, like, at least from what I'm understanding, you don't want to get into that. Then we would have to move the deadline even earlier, because we can't do it after Kubernetes. We have to then move it even earlier if you don't want to collide with like kep reviews. But it's also something that I think for us should maybe rather be then a decision that we move to the owners of this thing once the work group is done, because this will be in SIG-Arch and other places. It's not like we as a work group will own this. So we can only have a process for like the few versions that we own this. Afterwards, the owners might need to decide a better timeline that works for them.
Janet?
So I have a separate topic. Do you
Oh.
want to finish this before I?
Yeah, I do want to finish this. I definitely get the concern about not having people's availability to move things prior to all the deadlines. And I do think, I mean, especially for code freeze, right? Like, I think whether or not a particular requirement go to must, as you said earlier, right? It could depend on if a specific feature actually goes to GA or not, right? Or if a specific KEP is maturing or not, right? So I think part of AI conformance, we may need to rely on the decisions that come out of these freeze, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's Murnell's point also.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
Is that like we have to basically look at where these caps are, whether or not they got blocked, and undo, like we would say, like, oh, hey, you know, feature X is GA, but then it doesn't actually make it. Then we are like, okay, well, we can't actually do that for this conformance. And that's why I think doing that after enhancement freeze and code freeze would make sense, because it's a lot easier to see, you know, if we're tying it to the Kubernetes release cycle, we do have to be aware of everything that's going into the Kubernetes, and especially with what's GA, whether or not that impacts conformance. And it's going to be a little challenging to track if we are trying to do that with the readiness freeze or the enhancement freeze. But that's, I think, my point. I think you understand that.
Yeah, I think this makes a lot more sense going forward when we have like new requirements that happen to tie to Kubernetes. But right now, if you look at most of the shit, they're not Kubernetes native APIs anyway. So I'm just afraid that we're gonna like basically if we wait for a cat freeze to understand what cat is moving forward, we just lost a chunk of time that we could actually be using to like hash out these requirements, right? Especially right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, maybe it's kind of like with feature planning, calling out dependencies, and like if you have a dependency on a conformance
Yeah,
GAing, then that's a risk, and maybe
yeah,
it doesn't make sense to try and it could make sense that that's, you know, dependent on whether or not that actually proceeds. So I'm okay with keeping this, but we will have to probably make sure we know what risks are called out
for
if we
sure,
are tracking them in tree.
for sure. And I think to your point, if the risks are identified and we will rely on this bit, right? To say, hey, after code freeze, if any of the risks are, actually we didn't get what we needed from Kubernetes entry, then we would just basically not advance this guy to a must. I think that's what this means. But I think you still actually spend the time to discuss the requirement, which is actually the real value here, right? Does that make sense? Okay, Janet.
So my question is around the section above your arrow, and it's about the discussion and refinement.
Mhm.
And is it going to be a PR in addition to the original issue that's submitted against the working group repo, or is it going to be somewhere else? Or is it going to be on the CNCF repo?
I was thinking again, just brainstorming here. I was thinking the issues and the PRs are basically all sorry, where is it? All here, right? Like this is where the project started today. I think we have all the uh, issues here, right? Like so basically these are like the kept issues, right? Like for example, was a storage one. Storage one. Why am I not looking? Am I in the wrong?
Oh,
Oh,
this is
sorry,
the community.
sorry. This guy.
Yeah.
So like today, for example, like this is an issue, right? Kind of like the kept issue, right? And then I would imagine that we would push a PR to say, hey, we want this issue, aka this requirement, to be part of, say, Kubernetes 135, right? And then in the PR, there will be changes on the verbiage, there will be changes on the stage, right? Whether it's should or must, and it could stay in a should, but maybe the verbiage is different, right? And that PR will go through the review process. And that's what, oops, where am I? That's what that chunk of time is for. Whereas this is just simply getting the issues created. And then we as a team decide, okay, sorry, I'm going back and forth. Where is it? Yeah, so out of these 20 plus issues we have, maybe we commit to like say 5 for 135. And then for the remainder of 135, we'll just hash out, we will review all the PRs basically. And then once the PRs are merged, then we just move them to the actual AI conformance repo, which I don't have right now. Here, yeah, we'll
That's
move
fine.
it to here. So it will like be under the 135. Sorry, no. Will
The
be
docs,
under
yeah.
here, yeah. But we will have a 135 folder basically. Once all that is done.
And
Does-
for the PR review, are we going to have a approver, just like the real cap? Or it's consensus among us?
I propose that's a topic that should probably be discussed in SIGARCH once before a final decision is taken.
And I'm worried that SIGARCH won't have time to review everything.
I agree, but I think at least if we can establish some process that, okay, consensus here, take conflicts there, or so on, at least have their opinion on what will work best.
Who's doing it now? It's you as drivers of the work group, right? That would be at least a start, right? Saying those who already did this for 33 and 34, let's continue with that.
I mean, I think reviewers is all of us, right? Like
Yeah,
the
reviewers is all of us,
all
just maybe
reviewing.
approvers might be
Yeah.
y'all, right?
Exactly. I think reviewers is
Work group.
everyone in the working group, right? And then approvers, I think it's just who can merge PR, I guess. Yeah.
Currently, that's it.
Like I guess like for now, like if you're looking at who can merge these PRs, like it would be, I think, the working group leads, right?
Exactly. Which is also intended, I guess. Right?
Yeah. So I think again, we can take this proposal and share with SAGARCH so that they can veto.
That was
if they
anyway the
don't like
goal,
it.
right?
Yeah, exactly. This is just a proposal that we can share with them so that they can let us know if they think this is not a good proposal.
Yeah, I agree. That's the best way forward because I think we have had that topic on the agenda, but never got around to discussing it. And I know that Derek considers that as an open item. So appreciate that stance.
Yeah, it's much faster if we come with a proposal and they just say yes or no.
Just a quick question. So in terms of approvers, do we need to get +1 for all the approvers? Or are we kind of
So
like
far, I can only
mm.
speak to so far. It's been that way so far. Like we haven't had like disagreements.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, like who will have the
Jan
final
is
vote to
laughing.
merge?
Maybe I
Yeah,
should
to
let her
merge.
talk. Yeah.
Yep.
Janet, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So I think as long as we are in agreement that should be fine. I'm just thinking about the cases when, you know, when some people are out, which is common during summer that I just realized this year. And I don't want this to be blocked by folks being out. So as long as we don't, so everyone's free to express their concern, but if there's no concern or alternative proposed, I think we're fine with approving.
Wondering, shall I have a policy to kind of some sort of, if you know, some of those active members or maintainers might have objections, to postpone it to the next feature freeze, or we don't want to reduce this policy?
Mm.
Like, for example, if some of those new requirements might require, you know, might need longer discussion, you know, from other SIGs or working groups or maintainers, what we're gonna do?
Well, Pooja?
I think generally we should not be in a rush here. And the process might be also formalizing a bit of things that like actually we are all discussing here, right? Like it's just we need some formal person who is responsible for, okay, if one of you leads gives the approval, then it's actually okay to merge. Still, I do think that the group has enough activity to not have anyone like misusing that power, right? I don't think I've seen misuse of power that much in
Yeah, I kind
Kubernetes
of
for many years,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right. Like, I kind of maybe, you know, one of the things, I mean, like one of our proposal could be all the must should, you know, probably need to go through shoots. So then I guess since we have some shoots, we will find how many, or we'll see how many vendors will put them on their conformance profile. And then, like, you know, we can make a decision whether, you know, we want to promote some features to musts. Or because, like, the question is, like, I understand that, so there is a period of time before new features to Kubernetes become GA. And I guess, like, you know, if we want to put some, if you know that some features definitely will need to be must at some point, maybe it is better to put this feature to the shoot as fast as we can. So we will see how many actually vendors adopting it, what are the, you know, like, what is the direction of the community, whether we should make a vote to put it in the must, etc. Um, which means, like, you know, when the feature, when someone proposing to put feature from shoot to must, it will be obvious for everyone who following the process. I hope that makes sense. Like what I'm trying to say.
Um,
I really like the suggestion, honestly.
I think you're calling out that like none of this we're called saying, hey, a requirement has to start with should, right?
Yeah,
We're
I
not being
mean,
explicit. Gotcha. Okay.
and not like, maybe we should not use any musts at all. Like we should always go through shoots. I don't know. It's one of the options can be.
Yeah, going forward, that makes sense. And I kind of like to have this where you say you have to see adoption in should to make it a must, right? That's
Yeah, I
actually a
also
very
make a point in
nice
this
way.
doc. Yeah, I think we should have a policy to remove shoots. Like we don't have it right now. Like, for example, if I make a mistake, or, you know, yeah, workloads have been involved in some other ways, we need to have a way to remove them from the conformance profile.
So maybe removing is also its own cap, or seeing the removing a requirement the same as proposing a new requirement, just the same process, the same discussion. And then same PR, but the PR is to remove instead of.
Yeah, but how do you,
Makes
I mean,
sense.
what amount of adoption are we thinking? like for example, in the CAP process, right? I think usually it's like 1 or 2 adoption, at least show 1 to 2 adoptions. In this case, is that also the case?
Yeah, I think yeah, because in Kubernetes, I mean, if you don't find it, if you don't show adoption, there is no way for you to push feature. At least like this, what this has been before, correct?
I like that.
So, mhm.
So is it does this look okay?
Yeah, 1 or 2 adoption. Yeah, I mean, it really depends how many active vendors we're gonna have in this high performance profile.
If
So
you have
it's
like
hard to,
5,
yeah.
1 or 2 might
Yeah.
even be a lot, right? I do expect a bit more than 5, hopefully.
So I do want to capture what you said about removing a should, right? Like, what's a criteria for that? What's a good criteria for that?
Yeah, I think good criteria if the majority, from my perspective, the majority of vendors come to the working group or say this is probably not applicable for us, or kind of maybe some feature has been kind of evolved over time. Because I mean, like I understand, like, we are rapidly evolving Kubernetes and changing a lot of APIs, but I would imagine some of those APIs will be deprecated in the future. And I think we should have a way to adopt, right, and always use the, promote the right APIs from Kubernetes.
I guess
So,
I'll define criteria. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have a question about the previous point about 1 to 2 adoption. What's the 1 to 2? What does that mean? Is it number of
Like
users or?
like in the CAP process, right? 1 to 2 adoption usually means like say for the beta feature, right? Like how many do we know how many like downstream integrations have demonstrated that this is being used in the wild, and are we like are there feedback and is it mature enough? I can get the exact verbiage from the CAP process. Yeah, like for
I think
example,
in this context, we kind of want that like 1 to 2 certified vendors already use the should, or already are certified with the should. Like,
I want to
Mhm.
not focus on vendors because
that's
we
too
should be focusing on the community. We were being called out by SIG-Arch, so I want to make sure that we're focusing on what community want instead of what vendors can support or want to support.
yeah.
I think that will require some sort of community conversations, and what we hear from and end users, vendors, and people who use Kubernetes for AI. I mean, in CAP, I mean, there is a clear process for you uh, to explain like how you should explain user stories, and like how you should prove that the feature can go to GA. So I think it's somewhere here, real world use case. So maybe we should answer like, what does real world use case mean here?
Yeah. I think that's what I meant by adopters. Yeah.
Mm,
Real, we'll just use the same verbiage. Real world usage. Yeah.
usage.
yeah, real world usage.
Okay. So happy we have the CAP process to piggyback on.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for this, I don't think we necessarily have the criteria, but I'm just saying like, okay, let's define some criteria to remove a requirement later. I think it's good to capture that as a scenario we should look at though.
Mm.
And that it is possible, definitely.
And it is
No.
possible, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so are we good with this for now? And again, I just want to call out like as soon as 135 is released, people can start submitting self-attestation for 135 after. That's kind of what we have right now.
Mm.
All right, and then do we want to go through any of the comments? Oh, there you go. We already.
Yeah, I think this we can resolve. I think I have one more comment around adding more content for motivation. Oh yeah, Push, I think you're next one, so go ahead.
We could create.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
was
I think
just
we can
about
have,
like as we any yeah. As we
yeah, I
anyway
think
in GitHub, we can just add that, right? But sorry, Janet, I have a bit of a lag. I have very bad internet here in Spain. I'm very sorry.
yeah. So I think we can create issue templates that people can just easily use to fill out the requirement.
Yeah, and along those lines, I like the reason why I'm capturing this is like I foresee that, or I would like to see if maybe we could like have something like this for each requirement, but in the working group repo, like, that way we can keep track of these. Okay, so that one, okay. So that will be part of the template then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this one.
Yeah, this was mainly about if we should maybe make those kind of guidelines somewhere clear. I don't know if it's in the README of the repo or like so people don't come in because like I think everyone in this work group is fine, but like if we open this process to new people and people join afterwards, they might re-ask the same questions of like, hey, why are we doing this? And like it would make your lives as leads most probably easier to have a little bit maybe also a bit of copy paste from the charter or the proposal that we had before we started the work group, right?
For sure. Okay, thanks for the suggestion. Do we think that when solution peer grouping? Yeah, this is exactly why we got rid of this. It's not.
Yeah, I think we can close it, so we just discuss it.
Awesome.
I think just one comment from me was about motivations. I'm curious, like if you want to include also motivation to the new requirement, goals, and alternatives. Because
Where are you reading?
yeah, it's step 1, I think.
Okay, you mean here?
Mm-hmm.
Comment below my comment
Yeah,
or
it's
above my
between.
there, right there.
Oh, this one.
Andres, yes.
Yeah, so let's.
Yeah, because right now we only say proposal must include description of the requirements.
Cool.
Yeah, maybe motivation, goals, and alternatives also might be helpful.
Hey, it's looking more and more like a cap.
Yeah, because if there are some overlap with existing
I know.
shoots and
Sounds
yeah.
good. Does that mean we have to update all the existing ones? I'm guessing. Yes. Because the existing ones probably don't have a lot of that. Here's an example.
Yeah. Even that we're going to create PRs for each issue anyways, that could be updated here.
Oh yeah, we will update in the PR. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I think maybe yes, sir. Like I think another thing maybe it's user stories as well. Like because we're talking about this adoption, correct? So understanding, I think which like one of the kind of discussion points from the last calls we had that we might need to understand like why community need it. So maybe asking folks to add some concrete example would be useful. Similar to what Cap asking you to add user stories.
Well, sorry, just to clarify, I think this is for creating the new requirement, which is a GitHub issue, but this.
Okay.
I think Janet is saying this should be part of the PR, which is not the issue. So are we
It is
saying,
an issue template, I thought, right?
okay, so the
is
issue
this-
should actually include this, not just the PR then, right? That's what we're saying, right?
But what like PR and issue? What are the main differences? Like we convert issues to the PR eventually.
We're still at the proposal here, right? Proposal of a new requirement is not a PR yet, right? The PR is only once we accept a requirement.
Right,
Mm. I mean, for acceptance of requirements, we need this.
information,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, we need this information, and we need the specific user stories.
yeah. Okay,
And that will help with like making a decision on a new proposal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
okay. Does that sound good to you, Janet?
So wait, do we do the discussion in the issue or in the PR or both?
I think folks are saying we need this data in the issue itself to decide if we want to continue with the issue before we even push a PR. Like the PR is like saying we have accepted the issue, right? But then
I
the PR is
see.
just for the actual verbiage and process and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that makes sense to me. That's a bit different from KEP, right? KEP is just it's like a one-liner, and then you do your all the motivation stuff in the PR.
Yeah, I mean, alternatively, of course, we can just go via PRs directly. I mean, but CAP require for you to pre-create issue before, correct? So just to connect. I mean, usually CAPs they're open for, it could be open for some other issues which open by other contributors. But CAP has the actual information that
Yeah,
maintainers needs to review.
right.
So
So should we make it also like issue is just one liner? And then the PR is the actual,
Yeah, in the enhancement, we have the issue open just for tracking a cap. Maybe this will be similar. It's for tracking the progress of requirements from all the way from proposal to should to must, or from should to gone.
right?
yeah, I think
And then
that also
that could
works.
also,
Mm.
yeah, that could
Yeah.
also have the version information.
Okay.
Would work. It's just a very different process from like discussing in GitHub, but I think both are valid. One might
think the
need a
good
bit more redesign, right?
Yeah, and the good thing about PRs because we can directly ask questions in line, like an issue, it's very hard to do so.
Oh, yeah. Then are we okay with maybe moving all this to a PR then? And then just leave the GitHub issue as like one liner kind of?
Yeah, I think that probably would be better. The question, do we want to convert all of this, right, to PRs, all of the shoots? All these 26 shoots we have right now, correct?
Yeah. I mean, either way, we will have PRs for these, so.
Makes sense.
But this
Okay.
the PR for a new requirement is most probably it's a different one than the PRs that we are currently doing, right? For new items. Like this will be rather like the PR of creating like an enhancement proposal with like
Yeah.
a full markdown of like
Yes.
there's several fields. As you just showed also, like you want this like per item we would
Yeah,
want to track
exactly.
that.
Like, so all this would be part of the PR, like,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to come up with a proposal for the actual template, the PR template,
Yeah.
basically. Okay,
But,
so
yeah.
PR.
But it does make sense. It makes it much nicer.
Yeah, I think so. And you can track. That's the thing. Right. So something like this. Yeah. And then for like cap deadline kept freeze, we will just add a label on this GitHub issue, like for, Kubernetes for one dot whatever. Does that work? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we should call it SEPs, right? Conformance enhancement proposal.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
yeah, and we can, have a template for those enhancement proposals. I'm curious, like, why Kubernetes doesn't have it, because they just push everything from their API to Conformance, so they never had such as discussions.
You mean why in the PR or not?
No, like yeah, like the Kubernetes Conformance program, the main Conformance program.
Like,
I don't-
Kubernetes conformance, the history is kind of like very close to SIG testing, I think. Just like
Okay.
resulted out of like some of the tests, or if I remember that correctly, I'm not sure.
Okay, we're like 2 minutes or,
Oh wow, yes.
yeah, let's keep iterating on this, and unfortunately, we didn't get to the rest of the should requirement, but I think this is important, because once we have this ready, we can present to Sigarch, right? And then the rest will be easier, hopefully.
I want to quickly update one of the should that we didn't get to last time about the high performance storage. You have it on the
Oh, this one.
yeah. So I look at
Is it one or two?
feedback. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
So if you scroll down to the bottom, I look at all the feedback from them. It looks like we're supportive, and they provided some example solutions for how to implement those patterns.
Yeah, I think one thing that came from the last week's meeting was it's not, I think people were not clear on what do we mean by high performance. Like, I think we should capture some requirements for, like, how do you qualify high performance? Because otherwise you could use any of these storage options. Or like that was from last week, I think. In our last meeting. But anyway, we can iterate on the issue or the PR. We can move to the right commit place. Anyone else on this one before we end the call? All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for the lively discussion. Right.